in these days and times. We gotta keep in mind.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Keep Six Connect to Six Instagram Live. I am your host, Rachel. Welcome everyone. As you know, every week we come together to celebrate community partners and individuals within our community that are really making a difference and speak on a lot of the current topics that are going on today. And for those of you who may not have known, last Saturday, that past March 20th, was the National Day of Action. It was Free Them All, the National Day of Action, which was organized by the Toronto Prisoners' Rights Project. And we're going to have a representative from Toronto Prisoners' Rights Project, which is Rajean, come and join us to talk about their organization, what they've been doing and really advocating for prisoners, supporting the movement of prison abolition, and what went into really organizing this event and why it's so important, why it was such a necessary and needed event. So that is what we're talking about today. And just waiting to see, I believe I saw Rajean jump in, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if the live now... Oh, there we go. There's the request. Perfect. Just waiting for this to connect. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. I'm just waiting. There we go. Hello. How are you?
Hello. I'm good. It's the first time doing one of these Instagram lives, so yeah, hopefully everyone can hear me and everyone can see me okay.
Yes, if we can get confirmation just to make sure that you can hear us and you can see us okay before we get started. Yeah, perfect. So first of all, Rajean, I want to thank you for sharing the space with me today and for agreeing to be on this platform to talk about the past weekend's events and to really talk about TPRP and what it is that you guys are doing in the community, because it's necessary work, and we know it makes people feel uncomfortable, but the feelings that we are making people feel uncomfortable on the outside is not even a fraction of what's going on the inside. So thank you so much for taking the time to share this space with me.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Yeah, no problem. Welcome, everyone. Welcome.
Sorry, the reality of doing all of this work from your home and with your families. Okay, all right, we're all set.
Perfect. All good. So first off, what I want to do is I want to kind of just give you the floor right now, just to kind of introduce yourself. And for those who don't know, just to get an idea of who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah. So again, thank you so much for sharing this with me. We've been following the work that you folks have been doing since before we started organizing, throughout our organizing, and it's really important to have people that are doing frontline work, that are supporting prisoners, connect with each other, so that we can amplify and make sure that we're not duplicating our efforts. And so just a lot of love to Keep Six, and thank you for being with us on the ground. So my name is Rajean. I am a community organizer. I'm a member of the Toronto Prisoners' Rights Project, and the Toronto Prisoners' Rights Project is a grassroots community organization with former prisoners, with people who have loved ones inside, with people who just have a conscience and care about the people that are stolen from our communities, that are locked up inside cages. And we've sort of come together because we recognize that there's a bit of a vacuum of people who can take on the kind of grassroots community organizing that needs to happen to address issues around incarceration. We know that there's a lot of people who, have formed organizations necessarily to support prisoners with the most extreme harms of incarceration, helping to ensure that people can communicate with their families, helping to make sure that people have access to health supports and legal supports and all of that other stuff. But oftentimes, a necessary condition of doing that work is needing to work with the Ministry of the Solicitor General, and you give up a lot of, organizing power or ability to hold people's feet to the fire when you depend on clearance and you depend on those kind of things. And so, a lot of the people in our organization do that work as a part of their life. They're former prisoners, they're frontline workers. And so we just wanted to have a space that was ours, that had teeth, that had the power to be able to call out the things that we know are happening inside every single day, and start to build a movement in the same way that we're talking about defunding the police, is the same way that as we're talking about ensuring that like racialized workers are supported and have access to the things that they need. We need a movement that can make sure that we're supporting prisoners on the ground in real ways and making bold claims for the things that we know we need to see in order to take our community further. So that's kind of how we formed. And my personal fit into that, I got involved in this work when my own brother was incarcerated, and seeing, we're blessed now that he's on the outside with us, but going through having a loved one on the inside, especially during COVID, was incredibly difficult. And I think it's that emotion and that love that has brought a lot of people to our work and brought a lot of people to our organization.
100%. 100%. There's so many key points, and I feel I'm gonna apologize from now if I get a little emotional, because this is something that's very close to my heart. And the passion, I mean, just even seeing you speak on Saturday, and seeing the passion in terms of the work that we do, and especially when you have a loved one or friends or what have you that are in the system, it's just that much more motivating to do what we do, no matter the stigmas that are associated with it, no matter the possible repercussions. And it's true to be able to provide them with a voice, because oftentimes they're shunned, people look the other way, and people fail to give them the recognition and acknowledgement that they are human beings. And being in cages, being dehumanized, being treated worse than how some people treat their animals, is not. It's, to me, it's unfathomable to be able to even turn the other way and not look at this. But for so many people, and I loved what you said about people that are just conscious people that are that have a heart, that are able to really see what it is that's going on, why this is so necessary. Just looking at some of the comments here, we have someone who said, so true, but what sacrifice for clearance? We are starting to think about how to get folks on citizen advisory panels. They have oversight access to their local prisons 24/7. Amazing. That's from Unity Kitchen TO. Anytime on question. Imagine if we had that power during COVID. So, and we're going to touch on COVID in prisons, because we thought it was bad before COVID. It's only been amplified now. So first off, TPRP, you guys have done so much work, not just in the last year, but even over the last, since you guys started, really, watching your growth throughout in terms of the movements, the initiatives that you've supported. And I want to talk about some of those initiatives, some of those movements, and then delve in deeper into COVID-19 and delve into the reason why it was necessary to have this National Day of Action. So first off, many people often will look at the Canadian carceral system and say it's not as bad as the States, or we have it better. What are your remarks to that?
Yeah, there are so many, like, abolition is an international movement, and there's so much that has already been said just about prisons and jails in every shape that they take. And what I would say is that there's no benign way to lock people up. There's no benign way to push people into a cell that is overcrowded. Sorry, I got a battery notification. But yeah, there's no there's no way that isn't grotesque and dehumanizing. The carceral logics that say the way that we deal with community safety is to take people from their community, totally incapacitate them, and lock them away from any other kinds of supports. That's the same kind of thinking that has fueled, like, the transatlantic slave trade. And there really is no way to be able to carry out this dehumanizing, violent system without some measure of violence. And so, yeah, we hear that all the time of when we're talking about anything, when we're talking about police violence, people point to the States. When we're talking about any form of anti-Black or anti-Indigenous racism, we get pointed to the States. And it's a part of how Canada continues to succeed in carrying out human rights abuses without seeing the same sort of global uprising that we see in the States. But we know that the situation is just as bad and in all of the same ways as it is everywhere in any capitalist state that depends on prisons to be able to offer some semblance of community safety, which we know doesn't look anything like community safety.
Exactly. And people often say, and I hear this all the time, they say the system's broken. And I have to look and say, I'm like, the system's not broken. Because it's doing exactly what it was designed to do. And as Canada being a white settler state, the Canadian criminal justice system, the carceral system, is so deeply rooted in systemic racism, in the way that these laws were put in to control the marginalized individuals, Indigenous folks, the black folks, people of color. And people fail to see how it's literally a circular entrapment. And it's so hard to break free from that trap. And it's like you said, one of the things is oftentimes people downplay it in Canada, and I would say it's actually worse in Canada than it is in the States, in the sense that in Canada it's hidden so well that people are unaware, or they think, well, we're not the States, it doesn't happen here. But it happens right in our very own backyards with our family members and our loved ones and our friends. And it's the silence behind it as well that's so troubling.
Yeah, and I think, like, one of the things that we're learning through this organizing is that people's even just conception of what's happening inside prison is dependent on the imaginations of what it's like. Prisons in the States, we hear a lot of talk about private prisons and the things that the knee-jerk reactions that people have to prisons. But we've learned that there's a long way to go to tell the story about what is happening, what has happened, and what will continue to happen when we prioritize a system that puts people in cages.
Yeah, 100%. Jojo's saying, he said, the Canadian system is bad, deplorable. I'm tired of the comparisons to the US. Natasha, the system was not made for us. 100%. Canada hides their anti-black racism behind the US. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's so
Yeah,
true. It's so
yeah,
true.
yeah.
Um,
And I mean, you just mentioned it too, but like it any look at any metric, and we're trying to train ourselves out of talking about like overrepresentation inside, because there is no level of representation inside these institutions that is just. But if you just look at who is being incarcerated, who, you know uh, and who has any interactions with police, this we're talking about a system that is based on and is built to carry out anti-black racism, that is built to carry out anti-indigenous racism, that is a part of the settler colonial project that has created this land. Um, and yeah, that's why you see Black and Indigenous people across the country, no matter what jurisdiction, are disproportionately represented when we're looking at stats of incarceration. Uh, and yeah, it's clear as day, looking at any of those stats, that this institution is doing exactly what it's meant to do, and which is why we are being uncompromising and saying there there are reforms that we can maybe see that'll keep people safe today, but our eventual and actual goal is to be rid of the system altogether, because it isn't a system that is created to serve us.
100%. 100%. So, what are some of the mistreatments? Because I know you guys have a hotline set up, and you have individuals who reach out to you on a daily basis. What are some of the mistreatments that have been reported by individuals in Canadian prisons?
Oh gosh. Yeah, so I mean we just started our jail hotline. We have something called the Prisoner Emergency Support Fund. And those mutual aid projects have been a really great way for us to be able to connect with people inside, and to continue to hear stories from people inside about what's going on. Sort of in just the last little bit, we've been hearing from folks that are sitting in provincial institutions like the Toronto South Detention Center, Toronto East Detention Center, federal institutions like Joyceville, about just how bad the situation continues to be throughout COVID-19. Folks have just been talking about torture and torment on the sides of correctional officers or guards inside. People have been pulling all kinds of like weird things. We heard a story at Joyceville. Some of the guards were telling people that somebody on their range has tested positive for COVID-19, but they're still there and they wouldn't let them know who it was. Just like very insidious things. We've been hearing the regular stories of people being locked down I spoke to a guy today who was talking about being locked down for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, sometimes getting out for 2 hours a week, being denied any level of fresh air. Visits have been suspended over the course of this whole pandemic, and that has been a really heavy point for a lot of people, and especially with phone calls being so expensive. People are really stressed out. They're not hearing from their loved ones. Your stay seems that much more hard to deal with when you don't have those 2 week visits that are coming that you can look forward to break up the time. And so yeah, we're hearing for people like as you said at the start, the conditions were really bad. The food was really bad, the access to materials, the access to programming, all of that kind of stuff was really bad before. And COVID-19 has taken all of that and just turned it on its head. Now there's no programming. Now there's yeah, it's just been really bad and really heartbreaking for all of us that take calls or have lines to the inside and can get stories from the inside. The stories have been so regular, have been so consistent from institution to institution, and have just been heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And sometimes some of the stories that you hear coming from the inside are stories that you feel so helpless because you can't physically do anything at that time. And the most we can do I don't want to say the most we can do, but other than filing grievances and going through the traditional methods, um, a lot of these individuals are stuck, and we don't have that ability to be able to. It's almost like when you see almost like a lost puppy and you want to save him, you can't do that. We can't do that. And I think back to some of the stories that I've heard even within the last few months, especially within COVID, um, along with a lot of the racism that occurs within the institution, specifically coming from the correctional officers. And we've seen countless reports, even now, coming out of Toronto South and Maplehurst, of allegations when it comes to workers themselves speaking to the discrimination and racism that's happening. But this has been something that's been ongoing for inmates for a very long time. To give you an example, I recently had to file a grievance for someone because a correctional officer in Quebec decided that he was going to continuously call the black inmates monkeys. And the uproar that started, first of all, these individuals are in prison, so that in itself is, from a mental health standpoint, they're already, pardon my French, but fucked mentally. They haven't seen their families. There's limited access to phone calls and phone use. And to be on lockdown for a lot of these individuals, they're now on a schedule where they're locked down for majority of the day. And to have that little bit of time that they're able to be out of their cells and to be disrespected and have such racial terms used against them, they have every right to be angry. They have every right to be upset. But the thing is, when they decide that they're not going to lock up and they decide that they're going to express those feelings, the repercussion is they get institutional charges. They get maced and pepper sprayed, and nobody takes an account to step back and look at what was the result of this? What was the bigger picture? Why are these individuals? Why is this happening? And so they're forced to be in an environment where they're consistently told what to do at every step of the day and take the mental abuse and the emotional abuse that comes with that. And they have no out because their phone calls have been reduced. They're not able to see their families. That was one of the things you said, to help them pass the time, being able to see your families every 2 weeks or however your visitation period may be. That's now been taken away. So how do they cope? There's right, and it's something that keeps coming on and is an ongoing occurrence time and time again, of just the mistreatment that these individuals face on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Just through.
Yeah. If I could, I would speak to a point you raised earlier, and I think one of the things that's really important for us within Toronto Prisoners' Rights Project is that you know we don't really see ourselves in the position of saving people, and one of the really important pieces I think that's been really well illustrated over the course of this last year through the hunger strikes, the labor strikes, and things that have been taken on, is that prisoners are, you know, some of the most creative, brilliant people, and are taking on the work to undermine the conditions that they're facing. They're you know, the ones that are putting their bodies literally on the line, depriving themselves of food to say this is stopping here, you know, and that comes at a great cost. As you mentioned, we were working with a brother who was at Maplehurst when they started. I think it might have been their second hunger strike. I think there was 3 or 4 hunger strikes over the course of this last year, just up at Maplehurst. But so he was helping to organize and get the word out, and had connections to reporters and called us to make sure that we had the demands to be able to push it out and do all of that kind of work. And the result, Maplehurst Correctional Complex, they didn't meet any of the demands. They offered some lip service to get them to get the media to sort of look away. And then they up and took that brother and moved him to another jail. And these sort of starlight tours, as they're often called, are often a thing that activists inside face, like when they're publicly organizing around their conditions, and that has been a thing to really instill fear in people so that they don't talk up about the treatment they're receiving inside. But even knowing that those kind of things could happen, we're still seeing prisoners organize. We're still seeing people. There's just been an unprecedented level of organizing. When I talk to people who have been involved in doing this work for the last 2 decades, when we're talking about what we're seeing in provincial institutions right now of folks organizing hunger strikes and folks communicating demands and putting out regularly what the conditions are inside, like that's just not something that we've seen in institutions where people are spending 2 years less a day most times, or up until late. It's really just been try to get in, get out with their lives, and just the incredible resilience that folks are showing has been a testament to us on the outside to say we need to have an ethic that we are continuously taking these actions as folks that are not, depending on where you live, but as folks who are not facing constant surveillance and constant threat of violence from the state. We need to be matching their energy and demanding justice sort of on all levels. And so we really see ourselves as organizing with prisoners, and that offers a lot of hope. You talked about like just the helplessness that comes when we know that these terrible things are happening. Like we do one action, just even hearing from the folks inside to say, like, now people at the Toronto South are organizing a petition. They're incredibly energized, and they're feeling the next steps. They're seeing the bigger picture. They're saying, okay, these are the things that we think we could get now based on the support that we got outside. And so that kind of stuff is helping to keep us energized, to keep us in this fight. But yeah, it's a fight that has meant that we've all needed to learn how to take care of ourselves, and care for ourselves, because the stories that you hear are hard and they're heavy, and they do leave you in a place where you're like, you lose faith in the systems that are around you, and the systems that for some of us, we look to for safety.
So true. It's so true. We have one comment that says the prisons feed into the prison industrial complex that feeds off of incarcerating people, which disproportionately affects Black, Indigenous, and people of color. 100%. Reform will not work. Reform is set up by the existing exploitative system as an appeasing handout to fool people and keep them quiet. 100%.
I appreciate you reading them out. I'm not seeing the comments like come up in real time.
No problem. I'm just scrolling through them now. How do you heal from that? That is a great question. How do you heal from that?
Yeah. How do you heal from doing the work, or how do you heal from being incarcerated?
That's a good question. If you can maybe clarify, Gmail, is what you meant by how do you heal from that? Whether it's from doing the work or being incarcerated. I know for myself, I can say it's not easy. And there have been times where I've said, why am I doing this? Or is it worth it sometimes? Where I've questioned myself. When there's been times where it just feels like we're just getting nowhere. And it can be very discouraging. And for me, like, I've had personal experiences where it's happened with specific loved ones of mine, where sometimes I feel like if I can't help them, how do I help everybody else? How do I support everybody else? And it's one of those things where it's really the support from our community partners, from those within the community, and even sometimes I'll get a phone call from somebody that's just in the inside that's saying, "Hey, how are you? Like, I'm calling to check up on you." And I'm saying, "You're checking up on me when I want to check up on you." Like, and that's kind of what motivates. And it's the same thing. It's that energy, that exchange of energy, because like you said, um, from what we do, from us being out, it also inspires those on the inside. It motivates them, it energizes them, because sometimes they may also say, "What's the point? What's the point? We're not going to get anywhere." But seeing that support helps to build the resilience. And I can say, like, some of the most resilient individuals I've ever met are those on the inside. Some of the most brilliant, intelligent conversations I've had are with people that are in on the inside. But just like us, they can get disheartened as well. They can be demotivated as well. And that's why it's so necessary, even on those days where we might say, like, I've caught myself questioning myself, like, is this going to work? Or is it just going to fall back on ears that aren't going to do anything? Or we're just going to get another, like you said, like lip service, with no actual action.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so difficult. Like, we have to, as individuals that are in grassroots organizations, we also need to ensure that we're taking time for ourselves to heal. So I guess my question for you is, what do you do to ensure that that you don't get demotivated? What do you do to ensure that you're healing?
Yeah, I think for the folks that know me, who know that I'm often overworked and on the verge of burning out. But I think the abolition is as much about creation as it is about dismantling the systems that are harming us. And that process of creation, I find, is restoring, or offers offers some avenues for us to be able to take care of each other. With Toronto Prisoners' Rights Project, like, I'm really a part of a community that is, we're actively talking with each other, trying to frame the work that we're doing, or the developments that are happening, and trying to think about how it is bringing us closer towards abolition. So having those conversations that are clarifying, help us to keep our imaginations sharp, to continue to have the energy to do this work, because we're talking with each other about, okay, how is this a part of the puzzle to take us down the line? How is this petition going to help, or how is this email app going to help, or how is this rally going to help, or how is this new line going to help, or all of those kind of things. And I think having that community of people that can work with you, and I think prison abolition and the community that follows this work specifically is an incredibly ethical community, is an incredibly like thoughtful community. As you mentioned, like, prisoners are the first people to be like, "Yo, what's going on? You don't sound great. You don't sound like things are going well." And that's the kind of ethic that we're all trying to take to this work, to make sure that all of the people that are doing this work with us are, have the things that they need. They have the basic necessities. They have their needs met, so that we can continue to build together, because that's what we're doing. We're not just taking down the old world. We're building a new in real time, and we often say abolition in our lifetime, and that's what we mean. We don't think that at the end of our lifetime the work will be done, but we're talking about building this world anew right now. And so, not just doing the protest things, but also doing the mutual aid things, like sending somebody $225 from the Prisoner Emergency Support Fund. However small that might seem, just like the interaction, that knowing that we're literally transferring wealth from communities to communities, and then just seeing how folks are like, "Yo, this is gonna help me get groceries for the next 2 weeks. I just got out and I haven't eaten in 2 days," and knowing that we're helping people sort of in these immediate moments and are creating these networks of care, and that it's even possible to raise like $160,000 for prisoners. All of that kind of stuff is keeps us on the path. What do I do personally? I don't really know. Like I in any work that I do, I work too long. I don't sleep enough. I don't eat 100% the right way. But I have people that check in with me because they're coming from this ethic. It's most often like the former prisoners that I'm thinking about, some of which are, I could see their names, they're on the call, are the people that, they make sure that you're okay. They check in, they try to see what's up because they've developed these ethics of community care, like from being in the most harmful space of society, that they've brought into this work, and that has made sure that all prison abolition work is sort of moves with that ethic. And so, yeah, I feel like maybe I said a lot, and hopefully something in there was helpful for someone watching.
Yeah, no, very much so. Very much so. And touching on the Prisoner Emergency Support Fund, so this was something that, if you maybe want to even just touch a little bit more on what that fund, how that fund works, how can individuals donate, maybe how many individuals have benefited thus far. I know you've put out a few stats already, but just a little bit more on the Prisoner Emergency Support Fund.
Yeah. So the Prisoner Emergency Support Fund is one of our many mutual aid programs that we've created. And so specifically, I mean, we were sort of in the early stages of the pandemic. It might have been March, or actually it was in March. The anniversary is coming up very soon. I'm sure that someone can write it in the chat. But the pandemic had just started. We had some lines to inside. We were hearing from people. We were demanding releases, really, and hearing from people who were being released and had no access to resources or support. Folks who were people are taking out of their communities and often are caged 2 to 3 hours away from their communities. And so even just like getting back home and not having bus fare or not having groceries or things like that. So we started hearing those stories, and then we were just like really encouraged by all of the other mutual aid movements that we were seeing. I live in Toronto, and a lot of us organized sort of in the GTA. A lot of folks organized in Ottawa, and there were these communities that were taking on work to make sure that people were fed, making sure that people had all of the things that they need as we were all struggling with the pandemic and struggling with what it meant to be locked down in a confined space. And we were saying, well, why not have these same sort of mutual aid communities with the same sort of ethics that are supporting prisoners? Folks like Black Lives Matter Toronto or Black Lives Matter Canada, I can't remember which body did it, but they started a fundraising fund for Black people specifically. Maggie's, which supports sex workers here, started a fundraising fund for sex workers, and we got to start to hear about the impacts of those kind of programs. And so we took what we saw working in our community and made sure that prisoners had that same kind of support. And so we started it really first as a COVID-19 response, but over the last year, like I mentioned, we've raised something $160,000. And we've been able to support over 800 people. The applications are pouring in every single day. And so we know that this is the kind of thing that is really important, really no matter when. People always need money to be able to purchase things off their canteen. They always need money to be able to get support when they're released. And so that's what we've been doing. It's a great project with a lot of support from people in the community, from volunteers. Right now we are sort of well over our capacity in terms of how many people we can serve with the fund. We still need to raise like another $150,000, $160,000 to be able to meet the needs of the people that we've already connected with. And so, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's been incredibly motivating to see how much appetite there is in community to be able to support people. Folks have really just organized on their own to be able to make this fund a thing. People are are organizing comedy shows and art auctions and selling ice cream and cookies and all kinds of things just to be able to raise money. And so yeah, so we've started doing that. Some of the folks that we work with in Ottawa, the Criminalization and Punishment Education Project, have been even taking it a step further and thinking about how to, fundraise to meet more fully the needs of people that are connecting with them that are in crisis situations. And so they've also started putting out stories from people, about their personal cases, what kind of things that they need, and how they can get support. And that's also seen some success and some progress. And so this kind of transfer of wealth and resources, we know that a lot of people, just having first and last month's rent covered, would go a long way to keep them stable, to give them a platform to step off of. And so yeah, we encourage people to donate. You could donate on our GoFundMe, Prisoner Emergency Support Fund, at GoFundMe. If you search it up, you'll find it, or some folks can drop a link in the chat. You can go to our bio and you can see the link there. You can apply for the fund if you need it. As I mentioned, we're trying to work through a pretty lengthy list right now, but we are really prioritizing people who are in emergency situations. We want to make sure that everybody's getting the support that they need, but really prioritizing folks that are getting out with little support, and making sure that those people get an e-transfer or a money order as soon as possible. And so, yeah, so please donate, please apply. If you want to get involved with the Toronto Prisoners' Rights Project, all you have to do is send us a message. And these are the kind of projects that you can support and think about how we can do more fundraising, or how we can make sure more people are engaging in this work. You don't even have to join Toronto Prisoners' Rights Project. If you want to just do that fundraising on your own, do that fundraising, get in contact with us. You can also just send us an e-transfer. But yeah, it's been an incredibly motivating thing. Just every time we talk to folks inside and they're like, whoa, shit, someone is like, just the fact that people have raised money or people have given money to be able to support incarcerated people goes a long way to challenge the stigma that the folks have really internalized around themselves, their own worthiness. And it's really a project that says, we love everyone, we're here for everyone, we're not leaving anybody behind. And yeah, it's one of the first things that we did as a small community of organizers, and it's been really important for us and a great way for us to connect to people. And a lot of our members have come through their engagement or interaction with the Prisoner Emergency Support Fund. So it's also a thing that is allowing people to take that next step and politically organize to undermine the conditions of white supremacy that plague us all.
And we'll be sure to post the links for both the GoFundMe and Toronto Prisoners' Rights Project's website in the post when we post the IGTV as well, so you guys will have access to that as well. Now, we've been touching on COVID, and we've seen a lot of hunger strikes, which we've spoken about as well. What are some of the demands that prisoners have released in regards to for their hunger strike? We know, like you said before, there's been a lot of lip service where things will be said, but there's no real actionable items. But what are some of the demands? What is it that prisoners are asking for?
Yeah, the things are not even they're not even extensive. If you can imagine hunger striking for some of the things that folks are offering, it really paints a picture of how bad things are inside. Folks are demanding quality and nutritious food. People are demanding access to clean laundry. Up at Central East, where my brother was, folks are demanding clean water, clean air ventilation, an end to the draconian lockdowns that have people locked up in their cells for weeks at a time, for almost 24 hours a day. They're really access to programming, access to the books that they want to read. There's a lot of bans on books. It's already really hard to be able to get books from the libraries inside, and then being able to read exactly what you want to read, especially if you want to read have anything to do with how to understand your position in this world that is rooted in white supremacy and colonialism. Any of those kind of texts, they're definitely not allowed. Um, so folks have asked for culturally appropriate programming, being able to have access to television shows that keep them connected to their communities, asked for more phones on the ranges, asked for free telephone calls, because they're not allowed to make any money or don't make any real money if you're in a federal institution, and still have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to even just keep in touch with their loved ones. I mean, in one of the last sets of the demands, I believe it was from Toronto South. One of the demands were for Mr. Noodles. Folks are the demands that folks are making, that they're putting their bodies on the line for. Talk about just how small an offering to remedy the inhumane conditions. Just how small that offering has to be. They're not even asking for out there things or outlandish things, or even the things that we actually need. The folks have been talking about releases in different ways, but releases are often they're down on the table. Like they're saying like improve the conditions today because things are really 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 bad, and I think that helps to illustrate why abolition is so important, why we need to start closing these institutions, taking our loved ones out of these institutions, because nobody should be locked up in a place where you have to demand clean air. Nobody should be locked up in a place where you have to demand clean laundry. Personal protective equipment has just been a regular thing. They've been saying, guards need to wear masks, and we want to be given masks. And people are having to hunger strike for that. As people are protesting here in the streets to not wear masks, and the government is saying you really need to wear these masks to keep everybody safe. They're investing thousands, millions of dollars. I don't know how much money they're putting into these ads that are taking over the city, that are helping people to understand what they need to do to keep each other safe from the pandemic. Prisoners are being denied masks, and we're only now starting to hear when we did a press conference outside of the Toronto South Detention Center, and they had been demanding personal protective equipment just before the 70% outbreak there, and just on the day that we did the press conference, did they have some cars start to wheel in personal protective equipment and masks, and we could see it going inside. The cameras can start to see some of those things going inside. So it takes a community literally uproaring and saying and saying these are the conditions people are living under, for people to say, maybe we should make sure that people have access to masks. And so just the demands have been so moderate, and they point to a need for some real revolution.
Yeah, that's so true. The treatment and conditions, especially now during COVID, have gotten so much worse in terms of the reports. Multiple. First of all, we already know that a lot of institutions are over capacity, and now multiple individuals being put into cells over capacity. We've heard of examples of correctional officers coming from ranges that have positive, have inmates that have tested positive for COVID, and moving to ranges where wearing the same PPE gear that they wear when they're handling individuals that have tested positive with COVID, and then cross-contaminating and bringing that over to ranges where there haven't been any individuals that have tested positive for COVID. Richard, I see Richard just posted up the URL link for the gentleman who passed away from Toronto East from COVID-19. An 85-year-old man that's dead. And I know there's something that you said. Sorry, I don't know if my phone's the one that's coming out static like that. I remember something that you said on Saturday that was in relation to people being sentenced to a long and slow death. We don't have the death sentence in Canada, but right now, that's exactly what is happening with the inmates that are incarcerated currently right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it just goes to show, in terms of how inhumane this treatment has been. And another thing that you mentioned was in regards to phone use. Now, in regards to phone use, the costs associated with phone use, especially in provincial. And I want to touch briefly on this. I know we only have a few minutes left, but I want to touch briefly on Bell Let's Talk.
Mm.
Because as an organization that supposedly advocates for mental health, we've seen the complete opposite, especially when it comes to the exploitation of inmates. Um, what impact has that had, or what impact does Bell have on inmates within the provincial system? And what progress? I know TPRP has been doing a lot of protesting in regards to this. What progress, if any, have you seen thus far?
Yeah. This was actually like us as an organizing group was the one of the first things that we took on, as we were thinking about what are some of the things that we can challenge and change. The pandemic has really exploded all of that, but we were talking about, um, yeah, we're talking about like how much money people are being forced to spend to keep in touch with their loved ones, often paying hundreds of, sometimes thousands of dollars to be able to connect with their loved ones. I know early on when my brother was inside, I was paying $600 a month to be able to even just like receive sparing calls from him. And it wasn't until we learned about trap lines and using those kind of things that we were able to take some of those costs down. But a lot of folks don't even know about that, or don't have the wherewithal or the connections or the resources to be able to access those kind of supports. And so, yeah, like you said, we know that Bell. I mean, this issue with prisoners is one of many things that exposes how little Bell actually cares about our mental health. But they literally have a captive audience that they exploit and extort to be able to extract any amount of money. They've made themselves I can pick, if I'm unhappy with Bell, I can call Bell and sit on the phone with them for hours and say, I'm leaving, and they can either offer me more or I can go to another service provider. That's not the case for folks that are inside. They're in quote unquote care. They're in the custody of the province that is signed on to this deal. Some pretty insidious things, like the Ministry of the Solicitor General actually, while they had their contract with Bell, was making a commission off of the exorbitant fees that people were paying to stay connected to their loved ones or stay connected to their clients. Um, and yeah, just to have a government that feels like it is morally okay to make a commission off of people that you're holding captive is just disgusting. And these public-private partnerships are just show how insidious the prison industrial complex is. We're talking about prisons as the site of violence, but we're also talking about all of the institutions that have attached themselves to prisons, that profit off of prisons, or that make prisons the end goal of their dehumanization. And so we started this campaign. Actually, we didn't start the campaign. Folks in Ottawa were organizing at the Criminalization of Punishment Education Project. We're organizing on this issue, planning a rally. I think there was 2 years of rallies before we started to see active movement here in Toronto, and we started organizing on this campaign. And we were doing all the things. We were collecting petitions. We were rallying in front of Bell offices, and we got news just this year. And I'm not even sure that it has been publicly reported. I'm not even sure where this is at. And you can try asking the Ministry of Solicitor General anything, and you just get radio silence. Those are the folks that run prisons or provincial prisons. But we now know that they've changed cell phone providers to an American company. The company, I believe, called Synergy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as we've looked into Synergy, also have a lot of the same it seems like they operate mostly in the States, and they have a lot of the same fault lines as Bell did. A lot of the same, extortion of people on the inside. And so, I mean, the very immediate victory is that this has been a long-standing contract that Bell Canada has held, for a very long time, and we were able to demonstrate how insidious this relationship between Bell and the ministry are, to a point that they felt like they couldn't re-sign an agreement with Bell. They couldn't just continue business as usual. They're now in some of the details that we've heard. Will be allowing calls to cell phones. Before, calls were only allowed to be made to landlines. We're still waiting to see what will happen with calls to switchboards, because folks can't call. If you have to call someone, you have to dial 1 or dial 2 to be able to connect with somebody. Prisoners can't make those same kind of calls. And so those are some of the demands that we have been making. We've seen some movement on them because of the community pressure. Not obviously the kind of movement that we need to see. We need to see free phone calls as a reform, as like a small thing to be able to change the conditions inside. What we really need to see is an end to these institutions. But on our pathway there, and making these institutions less harmful and increasing access to resources and support, these relationships are the kind of relationships that we started to target. So we will also be coming at Synergy. Bell still holds a contract with the federal government. They run all of the federal prisons phone systems, and so we will also continue to be demanding that Bell let our families talk, and Bell let us talk. And yeah, so we're we see the light at the end of the tunnel in being able to put the pressure on, but know that a lot more work needs to happen to be able to address this harmful system.
So true. So true. I feel like this conversation could go on and on, because there's so much to talk about when it comes to this. But I want to just thank you for really spending the last hour shedding some light on what it is that Toronto Prisoners' Rights Project does, and letting individuals know how they're able to support with different initiatives like the Prisoner Support Fund. I know Richard just put a post in here. Spokeswoman with the Ontario Ministry of the Solicitor General said in an email that the province is working for a procurement process for a modern inmate telephone system. We'll see. But I do want to just thank you for sharing the space with me, really shedding light on what's going on currently, speaking on the importance and the necessity for prison abolition, and just really creating that pathway for that to happen, because it is possible to happen in our lifetime. And I know I was having a conversation with someone. Now's that time of change. With the current climate, we have that power to make that change, and that's why it's so necessary that we continue this fight. So thank you so much for sharing this space with me. Again, if you just want to take a moment just to let everyone know where they can contact Toronto Prisoners' Rights Project, how they can get a hold of you guys.
Yeah. Thank you so much for creating this space. Again, as I mentioned from the top, the work that Keep Six is doing is a part of this international struggle, this local struggle to ensure that prisoners have support. And we are always really encouraged to see the work and the resilience and the commitment that you folks have. So, continue doing that work. For everybody that wants to get involved in that work, I know that there are some people that are sitting at home that are like, I have to wait until I know more about prisons, or I have to wait until I know more about prison abolition before I can take that step. None of that. This space is for you. This organizing is for you. We need everybody to be able to engage in this work. There's an avenue for you to be a prison abolitionist wherever you work or whatever you do. So please connect with us. However you connect with us, we'll make sure that we receive you and do the work to bring you into the organizing. You can message us right here on Instagram. If you're not following us already, make sure you follow us. You can get updates about the organizing that is happening. If you're still nervous about joining the group, do your own organizing in your community. Like if you see us doing something, tell your friends and family about it. If you're hearing about things that are going on with incarcerated people in your community, step up and support them. You can connect with us on Facebook at Toronto Prisoners' Rights Project. On Twitter, we're Let's Talk Jails, or if you just search up Toronto Prisoners' Rights Project, you'll find us as well. And then our email is torontoprisonersrights@gmail.com. I know that all of those handles are all over the place, but hopefully there's so many different ways to reach out to us and communicate with us that you can find something that works well for you. And we can't wait to have you join this movement and be a part of this organizing. And power to all of you for taking an hour out of your Wednesday to sit here with us for this conversation. And I know that this is just a part of all of the work that you are already doing to support a world without prisons and a world without jails. At the end of our lives, they'll ask us what we did in this moment as we were organizing these revolutions. And hopefully that you'll have a good story to tell the people that are coming after you and that are in your communities about what role you played and where you showed up in that movement.
Amazing. Thank you again so much for sharing this with me and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. And I want to thank everyone that spent the last hour with us and really shared their own viewpoints and thoughts. Just so everyone's aware, tomorrow we do have a empowerment to unlock the justice system. My battery died. That will be live on in Facebook and YouTube, and it is actually going to be called "I Am Woman Supporting Loved Ones Incarcerated," and it's going to be speaking directly with women who have supported partners, loved ones, children, sons, fathers through the incarceration process, and the mental health impacts associated with that as well. But until then, I want to again thank you, Rajean. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and have a good night.
Yeah.